everyone, Angela here. Life can be challenging. Trust me, I get it. However, I have learned we can either view the opposition or value the opportunity. Ponder on the problem or praise the potential. Focus on the situation or find the solution. Despite the current circumstances you're going through, I invite you to join me today as we embark on a grand adventure to discover the reasons why it's a good time to be you.
Here's the encourager herself, making every day a good day, Angela Henderson.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Yes, thank you. We are so glad that you are here today. So turn to your neighbor and say, it's a good time to be you. It's a good time to be you. And it is. You know, life is a pleasure. And God, when He created everything, He created us to be able to enjoy life. He created the animals. He created the sea. He created the fish. He created the sun, the moon, and the stars. And He didn't do it for His enjoyment and for His pleasure. But He did that for us. Because after all those systems were put into their perfect place, He said, now let us create man. And when He did that, He looked at that and He was pleased with what He had done with man, but He realized that something wasn't quite good, and it was that man was alone. And so He said, we're going to do something even greater, and we're going to create a helpmate for man. And so then whenever He created woman, He looked at His creation and He said it was very good. And so all throughout the annals of time, men and women have been coming together, doing great things together to build the world, to build the kingdom, to live the dreams that are inside of them. But there's an enemy out there that wants to destroy that wants to pervert everything that God has accomplished and that God has set in our lives. But we're so grateful that we have a Savior that can help us to take back those promises. We have an amazing couple with us today, Tim and Maria Rice, that are going to share with us their journey as they came together as a couple, but yet had to fight and struggle through a very hard and difficult battle, an addiction to pornography. A lot of people don't want to talk about that. Some would rather just keep it quiet. However, because of their bravery, they were able to see beyond that situation and realize that that had purpose. And now today, they are helping other people overcome it too. So don't go away. We'll be right back as we introduce this amazing couple and hear their story. Do you have an extraordinary story of when you discovered it was a good time to be you? I bet you do. How about send it on over to us for consideration at it'sagoodtimetobeyou at AngelaDHenderson.com. Welcome back, everybody. We are so glad that you're with us today. And so at this time, we'd like to welcome Tim and Maria Rice to the stage. Give them a hand clap. Welcome. We are so glad you're here. Thank you for being with us today. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's our pleasure. You know, I've been very excited about this opportunity that you're affording us. You know, this is such an important topic, and I think it's one that a lot of the church has just really stayed away from and shied away from. And it's not maybe provided a safe place for people to be able to truly come and to be able to talk about it and to get help. And so I know that your story is just going to impact so many people today. And so thank you, first of all, for sharing this with us. But before we dive into maybe the meat of things, I want to give each of you an opportunity just to kind of share with us a little bit about your background and what was your upbringings like. So Tim?
So my background is I'm born and raised right here in Charleston, South Carolina.
Charleston boy.
Yes. And I grew up in pretty much a single parent home.
Okay.
My father left when I was about 3 years old, and my mother remarried twice. But by the time I was about 13, we were pretty much a single parent, family.
Right.
2 sisters, 1 older, 1 younger. And I had a pretty good upbringing. There's a lot of things that happened, though, that were, very pivotal moments, bumps in the road and things that I guess you could say kind of detoured my path very young. One in specific thing that I dealt with that kind of leads us into what we're talking about today is when I was about 11, 12 years old, I had walked through a situation with sexual abuse. And that situation really opened me up to a lot of things very early in life that I wish didn't really happen. But I can say I'm thankful because God always turns our mess into a message.
He really does. And Tim, you were, again, me in numbers. I just want to kind of speak into some of the numbers that you brought to our attention today.
Yeah.
And God, He loves numbers, and our days are numbered, and He's a God of order. And so numbers tell a story, and they speak to us. And so at the age of 3, you began to experience that fatherlessness, but yet that number 3 represents a divine unity. And so the Father was always with you.
Amen.
You know, the Heavenly Father was always there. And then it was at the age of 11 or 12, at that pivotal time, you know, in your childhood, where you experience this abuse. And 11 represents a kind of disorder, imperfection, incompletion, but 12 represents ruling and reigning.
Amen.
And so, you know, God doesn't have us experience things to just mar us and scar us, but He has us to experience things so that we can come back ruling and reigning in them and governing and walking in authority.
Yes.
And so that's another reason why you have this opportunity, I believe, to be able to share this, because you are walking in authority. So, Maria, tell us a little bit about your upbringing.
Yes, so I am from Venezuela.
Ah.
And then I grew up the middle child of an older brother and a younger sister. We grew up in a family together until I was 15 years old. That everything happened in my family, where my parents got divorced, my mom lost all her businesses, and my brother, he was 16-year-old, and he pregnant a woman, a girl. And everything happened during that year, but in that year, you know, God used all of that for us to become, to know Him, to get to know Jesus, to be saved, because my mom was going crazy trying to, you know, find peace in something. Like, she tried everything until she finally found Jesus, and through that, you know, we all walk into God. We get to know Him. And in 2005, I got the opportunity to come here to the States for a year to learn English. And then I came for a year. I went back to Venezuela, but God opened another door for me to come back in 2006. And then I stayed.
I love it. Well, with you, my friend, you know, I love Venezuela. Did some missions work there several times. And it's just a beautiful place. The first place I ever went to, you know, to start my missions work. And the number 15 represents a new direction. So at that age in your life when it felt like everything was falling apart, God was really positioning you for something new and something different.
Yes.
And in 2005, it was grace that brought you here. And so we're very honored and blessed to have you with us. And so we're going to go to a break. And when we come back, we're going to hear how Tim and Maria met and their journey from that moment on. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Everyone, we're so glad that you're with us today. We have Maria and Tim Rice with us, and they're just sharing their story of just embarking on an amazing journey, an amazing adventure of just breakthrough and freedom and deliverance. And so, Maria, we ended with you being able to get here to the United States. So how did you and Tim meet?
So we met at church. I was already at church, and he came in 2008 to the church, and the first time I saw him, it's like, I like that white guy. I really
This Latina girl, I'm liking the white guy. I
like him. I want him. No, just kidding. But no, I liked him. And, you know, we got to be friends, and then we dated for 6 months at the beginning, and then we broke up for 2 years, and then
It was my fault.
It was
it was his fault.
It's always the guy's fault,
Yeah.
right?
But and then, you know, after 2 years, we got back together, and then we got married, and we got 2 wonderful kids now.
Oh, how beautiful. And their
yeah.
ages?
They are 2 and 6.
2 and 6. Those are
Yes.
great ages. That's wonderful. Well, as you know, we're here today just talking about a little bit of awareness of pornography addiction, and it's rampant, and even in the church, amongst the community of believers. And a lot of times we choose not to bring it up and not to discuss it, but there's freedom whenever the truth is exposed. And so we are just so grateful that we have this brave couple here sharing with us today their experience in that, and also their just journey to deliverance. And so, Tim, as we are now, you're married, you've got 2 beautiful children, but when did you first realize that there was an addiction there to pornography?
I really never thought about it as an addiction up until the point that I'd gotten saved. I never really thought about it as a struggle. Being out there, and I was very young when I first got introduced to pornography at the age of 8 years old. And it was something that just was continual and a derivative of certain things that had happened in my life. And but when I got saved, I realized something's not right with this. And, you know, periodically you would hear the subject being spoken about amongst the brothers in the church and how people were trying to stay away from it. And it just further drove home the point that this is obviously not what God's design is, you know, for this. And it really became more aware. I really became, more aware that this was a problem when I got married, because I had been experiencing a level of great victory for some time, and not falling into the sin of or anything of that nature. And then we were married for about a year, and in one specific evening, I ended up down a rabbit hole on the internet, looking at things that I had no business looking at. And it wasn't until the next day when everything kind of hit the fan, and I went on to work, and I had left my cell phone at the house, and the Holy Spirit began to deal with my wife and said, I want you to go and kind of check out what's going on. And she was able to search through my history, which I never deleted because I didn't know how to. For as long as we had been married, it wasn't something that I'd been doing. It was kind of like something that came back to haunt me that I thought I had great victory over. But it was in that moment that I really realized that, this is a problem, especially, you know, when it started to affect my marriage and my wife and things of that nature.
Yes, well, you know, you could see how the enemy tried to set you up, even as a child, with the exposure and then the abuse. But God is so faithful that He always, always provides a way out. And the faithfulness of a companion, that partnership that we just, you know, talked about at the beginning, how God brought man and woman together, who was brave and bold enough, you know, to be able to listen to Holy Spirit, to what He was instructing her to do, to help bring salvation and deliverance into the relationship. So Maria, with you, you know, being on the other end of that, how did this impact you?
Yes, it was definitely really hard. When I found out, I felt like everything dropped inside of me. I felt anger, I felt sad, I felt disappointment. I remember those 3 days were like one of the hardest days in my life. I have cried, I felt, you know, things that I have never felt before, like comparing sin. Like I have never struggled with that. And then I would think in my mind, you know, I wasn't enough for Him. Like, why is He looking at that? Like, why did I look different? You know, and you know, I dwelled too much on my thoughts of all. It was too much. But in those 3 days, I remember not talking to Him, don't wanting to be with Him, don't want to do anything with Him, and I would put in my mind the picture. I would draw a whole picture in my mind of how could everything have happened, and I was killing myself. It was the most horrible thing, and please don't do that. Don't ever do that. Do not dwell too much on your thoughts, because you know, you will go crazy. I remember just, you know, the third day I told Him, you know, we're going to do this. I'm going to forgive you. Don't ever do this again. But I really didn't forgive Him. You know, I was just saying those things in words, but I really didn't forgive. I was holding that into my life almost for a whole year, you know, and I was allowing the enemy speak to my mind, speak to my ears, you know, and just putting all these thoughts bombarding me, and you know, and I was allowing it. So I extended my process because I wanted to, because I allowed it to.
Yes. Well, that is so beautiful, though, Maria, how you've confessed and you've admitted that and how brave you are. And so we're going to come right back in just a moment and let you folks continue this amazing story. So in the meantime, we're going to take a break, but we'll be right back. Are you a business owner or a professional? Do you work with a staff? You know, sometimes that can be considered an infection. Why don't we take that group of people, that marvelous group of people, and let's turn them into a team. Let's do some personal discovery, team building, and leadership development. Reach out to me at AngelaDHenderson.com. I would love to embark on a grand adventure with you. And remember, it's a good time to be you. Welcome back. Welcome back. So, Tim and Maria, we see now how this affected you, the human side of you, as, just the pain that you were both feeling and both experiencing and walking through. But now, with that being said, what led then to the change and to the deliverance? And what process was that like for you both as individuals and as a couple?
So yes, like I said, my thing, it lasted like for a year where I was carrying all that. And, I wasn't living because I was living just to see if he was doing something, checking his phone and doing this. And it was a hard year for me. But until I got into the realization that I cannot do this by myself. I needed help. I needed somebody to help me through this. Yes. And I looked for help. My pastor, I told her what I was feeling, what I was living, and she led me into this process of forgiveness. I remember she told me, just for 10 days, just look in scriptures of forgiveness and meditate on them, pray over them, and apply it to you. Yeah. So I looked for that, and every time I would read a scripture of forgiveness, it would boom, it would take something out, and it would take the other down. And I remember one of them that says, when you forgive others, I will forgive you too. Yes, your Father will forgive you too. I'm like, oh my God, I need to forgive him if I want forgiveness.
Yes, we need that.
And
grace.
I thought about, all the things that I have failed people too, that I wasn't perfect either, that maybe not in that same area, but that I have failed in other areas too, and that I needed forgiveness as well. So the same, grace and extend forgiveness that the Father had given me, I needed to apply to his life.
That is so
And
beautiful.
I remember when I prayed that and I understood that, I felt like 100 pounds of weight were lifting off of me. Like I was like, okay, I'm able to live again, And I remember talking to him, sharing that with him, and that brought more freedom into my life. Definitely. And so definitely forgiveness, real forgiveness is the key to it.
Yes, it is. And there's something to be said about freedom. I read once that there's a quote, and it says that, unforgiveness is like drinking poison expecting the other person to die.
Yes.
And that just doesn't happen. It takes place inside of us. And it kills us. Mm-hmm. But then walking in that forgiveness, it is such a freedom and such a release. Yes. What about you, Tim?
So for me, I would say it would be like, if I could classify it into 4 things, I would say the first thing is to expose it. Because when you leave things in the darkness and you don't bring them to the light, you can't really get help with it. And so I exposed the situation, of course, to my pastor, and I began to undergo counseling and accountability. Accountability is somebody who that you can trust because they care about you standing on the other side of this thing in victory. Mm-hmm. And you can be vulnerable and you can be honest and you can receive.
It's like a safe place.
Exactly, the safe place. And that's where sometimes it's really tough because shame is the killer. Shame is the thing that stopped me for years from actually having the one-on-one conversation and just kind of trying to fight it on my own. So exposing it, accountability, and then I'd say like the main thing is really falling in love with Jesus. There's a difference between loving Jesus and falling in love with Jesus. Yes, there's an old song that says, the more I seek you, the more I find you. The more I find you, the more I love you. And as I continued to find God and search for him in that season, he revealed himself to me as this great love, as grace, as mercy and forgiveness, and taught me how to forgive myself, because that's one of the things that's really tough with me is I would always be really hard on myself and couldn't forgive myself for what I had done. And then honestly, I know that this may sound somewhat weird, but one of the things that I never forget was the sounds of her leaving those first 3 nights out of the bed and couldn't sleep with me, and I would hear her in the living room crying, and I always remember that cry. I remember those things, and it brings me to this place of, I never want to experience that again. And falling in love with Jesus connected me to the heart of the Father, and you begin to love what God loves and you hate what God hates. And
Amen, Tim. So beautiful and well said. I couldn't have said it better myself. And the Bible tells us that we're to love others the way we love ourselves. And with you learning to forgive yourself, it really helps you also to be able to truly walk in forgiveness,
Definitely.
Of others. So how do you folks feel that this has strengthened your marriage and your relationship?
our trust.
Wow.
Trust was the number one thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Trust is always going to be the biggest thing for us. Maria is a big deal in trust. If she gives you trust with anybody in her life, it's because she trusts you. It's vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so that was something that was broken on that day. And believe it or not, God can repair those things,
Amen.
even though they seem detrimental. And not only has he repaired it, I believe he's made our trust, our vulnerability with one another like 10 times stronger than it's ever been, even when we thought it was impossible.
Beautiful.
But it's made our marriage, it's really been a good time to be us.
I love it. I love it. Well, we'll be back in just a few moments, and we're going to hear more of this amazing story and what they're doing now and how God has used them beyond their time of deliverance. Check out my new book on AngelaDHenderson.com and take a journey to discover the many reasons why it's a good time to be you. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. And so now, Maria, just thank you for just being bold and strong and courageous enough to rise to the challenge, to truly be that helpmate, to, walk with your husband through this situation. It was both your situations, but you had to be bold and brave and strong and not allow the drama and the trauma of it all to, cause you to make choices and decisions that, were not going to be of any help, but that could even be more divisive. And so that's very powerful. So Tim, what is it that you do today to help men with this pervasive issue, especially in the church? How do you help men walk in a sense of freedom where this is concerned?
So, in all honesty, what I've found is that, when you get in connection with people, a lot of times men who are struggling with this issue, they don't talk about it with anybody because they're not really in a communicative connection with somebody that they feel like they can trust.
Yeah.
So building those relationships are important. And then after, I've built relationships with men, sometimes this is the subject that comes out. Yeah. And this is the struggle that they're struggling with. And it could be a bunch of things. It's not like the totality of, what I do as ministry, but it definitely is a big part of it. And, ministering to them and encouraging them with my own testimony and my story, and they're able to see the fruit of that, a healthy marriage and things of the nature. And some of them think that maybe I'll never be able to even get free because they've struggled for so long, and they get to experience that in relationship and see somebody who has actually broken the bondage of perversion, who has actually stepped into the freedom that Christ gave us on the cross. And so it's amazing, and there's practical ways to do it, but there's really not a specific blueprint, because sometimes it could be, from different situations in people's lives, and people are different. But the number one thing, and this is the thing that I always share, is fall in love with Jesus. Go spend time with Jesus, because that's what really, really changes the heart. Everything else that we do in our own strength is good. It's very important. But the number one thing that produces the change that continues to change our life is the true relationship of falling in love with Jesus day in and day out.
It's so true, Tim, and I have used that many times myself. It's about you had a knowledge of Jesus, but when you fall in love with Jesus, it just changes. He rocks your world.
Definitely.
He rocks your world. It changes everything. It does. So Maria and Tim, what would you guys maybe advice that you would give to couples? How would you strengthen and encourage couples, just having walked through what you've been through?
Yes, definitely seek help.
Yes.
Like, do not battle this battle by yourself,
Yes.
because you're not going to be able to conquer it. Like, trust me, I try and I fail. And so definitely, seek help, seek counsel. People around you, don't be ashamed of your sin. God has forgiven you, okay? And just seek for help. And God's gonna strengthen you. He's gonna forgive you. He's gonna give you the tools to come out of that. And and have communication with your husband. Communication,
Definitely.
protect. Healthy protection. Okay, it's not that you're gonna be in top of it. What are you doing? What are you calling? Like no, like healthy protection, healthy communication. I would say that.
Yeah, and I would just say, I think the number one tool is the shame that the enemy tries to use, especially for people in the church. If you are already a believer or even serving in any kind of ministerial capacity, the enemy's firing all kinds of shots at you and everything of the nature. He wants you because you're the influencer. But the truth is that God protects those who he promotes. And, the moment you expose it and you get to a place where you can actually experience grace, you will see that when you bring that thing from the darkness into the light, it's almost like a weight being lifted. And then after that, it literally is so much more simple. So just expose it and get some accountability and somebody to speak into your life. It's very important.
Wow. Well, thank you guys so much for just being so transparent with us today over this much needed topic, something that needed to be talked about that seldom is. And your story has just provided such empowerment and encouragement and hope to so many others. And so thank you again for just being so real with us.
Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Well, it's been an honor. So when did you realize then that it was a good time to be you? Maria, we'll start with you.
Yeah. I would say whenever I was able to forgive, to truly forgive, because that gave me the opportunity to walk in freedom.
I love
and a
it.
freedom that, I was missing out in that year because I put myself in that bitterness, I would say. But then when I realized that forgiveness is freedom, then that was a good time to be me.
I love it. I love it. And Tim, how about you?
I think for me, it was a lot sooner, just because those 3 days that she wouldn't speak to me, it was so hard. And I remember that Friday morning in the kitchen when she looked at me, and the first words that she said to me was, "I love you."
Wow.
And I'm willing to make all of this work, and I forgive you, but don't ever do it again.
Yes.
And the truth is, I dropped to my knees at that moment, and I grabbed her hand, and I kissed her, and I promised her, I said, it'll never happen again. And I just knew at that moment, because, everything was okay, and I wasn't going to lose my wife and everything that I truly loved over a horrible moment. So I would say that's when I realized.
Oh, that is so beautiful, so beautiful. That third day is like resurrection power, isn't it? Rising up and starting again.
Yes,
I
Lord.
love it. I love it. How about at the count of 3, we let the people know out there that it's a good time to be
All
you,
right.
okay?
Sounds
1,
good.
2, 3. It's a good time to be you.
Hey everyone! For more encouragement, just go to our website at www.angeladhenderson.com. And remember, it's a good time to be you.